guys, Joe here, the man who has re-enlisted for a second tour for Super Earth. Helldivers got a big patch, and I got to play this week. It was really nice. Nice. That game's good again. But I'm here with a rainy day video, something fun this time. As I've said a couple times in prior videos, that I think Jose Aldo, Scarface, whatever you want to call him, Jose Aldo Jr., I call him a different name. I have a different nickname for him. It's the greatest of all time. I think he's the greatest ever. I've been on the channel for about 2 years now, and I always say, or I used to always say, I should say, GSP's the greatest ever. We all know it, blah, blah, blah. Recently, within the last couple of months, I had an epiphany. I will admit, outside source influenced me, and it put this thought in my head. Because this person was on a different channel on YouTube. Shout out to Jack Slack. Big fan of his work. He said he would probably put Jose Aldo as the GOAT. And I said, let me think about that. Because Jose Aldo, for people who don't know, is probably my second favorite fighter of all time. When he's fighting, he's number one. He's of active guys. He's my favorite active fighter when he's fighting. Currently, he is again. So, he's my favorite active fighter currently. He's my second favorite fighter all time. Boss Rutan, who I have a poster of right here, that's what I'm pointing to. He is my number one favorite fighter of all time. He's actually, by a good margin, I would say, Boss Rutan's number one. Because Boss Rutan is like an actual real-life hero to me. But some people in the comments disagreed with me. And that's fine. I expect it. In fact, I encourage, the conversational discourse to kind of talk. Let's, debate and stuff like that, you know. There's a lot of shit. We have some vocal Shevchenko fans in our fan base, and I'm not a Shevchenko fan, and I actually disagree with a lot of things that they agree with, and vice versa. And I think that's cool. That's fun. It's all love here. I crack jokes and stuff like that, but I never mean anything mean-spirited except for towards one or two guys, maybe three now. Yeah, three. But it's not like Shevchenko, so you guys are in the clear. But no, it's it's all good fun, you know, everything like that. I critique, but I don't mean anything harmful, of course. But I think Jose Aldo is the GOAT. And I'm going to defend my beliefs here. And I'm going to start off by saying, what is the greatest of all time for a lot? Everyone has their own different criteria. And I think that's what's interesting. Mine's an opinion, right? If it's my opinion that Jose Aldo is the greatest, I'm not stating it's a fact. Everyone has their own criteria for how they rank who the greatest of all time is. Some people, I don't allow drug cheats. If you've popped hot ever, donezo. Not allowing it. Because once you pop hot, I have to question every fight. You got caught once, but have you popped or have you been doing it 1,000 times? And that's not fair. It's just not fair. Once you pop out, I have to question everything, which means I have to question every win, which means, as far as I'm concerned, every fight you got's a no contest. Very anti-drugs in the sport. Very anti-unfair advantage like that. Some things are God-given, if you're taller, you have a great reach, you're naturally more athletic or something like that. I feel like I'm just picking on John Jones here. I kind of am, because that's who I'm mostly referring to. That's fine. John Jones, second largest or longest, because you think he was tied with Stefan Struve. Crazy. And mega athlete. No, I got no problem with him using his God-given gifts. I got a problem with him roiding. It's kind of how it is. But I judge my GOATs based on multiple factors. 5, in fact. 1, based off legacy. And none of these are ranked. These are just a random order I kind of picked. 1, legacy. 2, the weight of their wins. And that's important. 3, the state of the division at the time of them fighting. When they were in that division, what was the state like? And how well were they doing correlating to the states of the division? Did the division get better and you weren't there anymore, or did the division or were you only good when the division sucked? There's things like that I kind of weigh. Again, I can't think of anybody at the top of my head who falls into that category, but still, the context is very, 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 very important. For your in-fight ability, I think a guy like Tony Ferguson is incredibly high on lightweight GOAT for me, because in his prime, dude, there was only one guy. We were like, oh, that guy's like only one guy in everyone's mind was like, Habib's the only guy that's beating him, you know. And I think like a really fun fight is like prime BJ Penn BJ Penn has a lot of losses, whatever. That's not fair. It was the end of his career. He was out of his prime, all that stuff. But like at his peak, dude, like only GSP was better than him of guys he could fight. Like GSP and Frankie were like the only ones. And 5 is just miscellaneous little things here and there that kind of matter. That's usually kind of for me like dual division belts, or were you the first to do something, or X, Y, and Z, like undefeated streaks and stuff like that. Stuff like that kind of matters to me. So GSP, like I said, always been my go-to guy, and one of the reasons for that is when he literally went on a rampage during that division's best period of time, because you couldn't spit in any direction without hitting a top-tier fighter at the time. You had guys like Mike Swick, Dan Hardy. I have a list right here. I'm going to try to think if I can name most of them. Like Mike Swick, who was incredibly good, terrifying fighter to fight at the time. Mike Swick. Let's get all the AKA guys out. John Fitch, Josh Koscheck. There's like Dan Hardy, Diego Sanchez. I said John Fitch. Carl Parisian, Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, who was legit good. Like, yeah, he got the tough 4 win and got the title, you know, off of a crazy upset. But no, he was like a legit talent. Legit very good. Anthony Johnson, who probably was too big, so you can probably remove him. But Roy McDonald, Thiago Alves, Martin Kampman, Johnny Hendricks, Carlos Condit, Robbie Lawler. Oh my God, I can keep going. I remember like Marcus Davis. Like Marcus Davis was like mid-tier in that, but that dude was insanely good. Welterweight was insane in those early days, or not in those early days, in that era. Nuts. The best that division's ever been. What do we got now? Well, we got JDM and Shavkat, Leon and Bilal Muhammad, and are we really convinced Ian Machado Gary is like a top tier guy? Like, he's kind of squeaking by a lot. Yeah, I mean, he basically, if he didn't fight all the names of he didn't fight all those guys I just named, but all the ones he did fight, he dominated. And the ones he didn't fight, the reason is these guys were killing each other off, trying to climb the mountaintop to fight him. And when they did get there, they got beat every time, you know. I think Aldo edges him slightly, though. GSP is the second best ever, I think, personally. I think Aldo beats him. And I'll kind of go through briefly, just like each one. So, like, if you look at legacy, GSP, him and Aldo are basically tied. You can probably argue GSP's legacy is better. I think I'm going to say they're even, because Aldo is GSP is the guy we like talk about with every welterweight ever. We still do that with Aldo as well. And I know some people are like, oh, Volkanovski or Max Holloway. I don't think either of those guys are great. But the fact that they're still getting compared to Jose Aldo, who both of them have beat, by the way, and they beat him at the end of his, near the end of his career, and he was still fighting at a top level, right? Like, he was still fighting at a top level way past his prime. Not way past his prime, but when he's leaving his prime, fighting these guys and making it competitive and, keeping it going. It's very, very, very impressive when you think about it. Because these guys were entering their prime, smashing dudes left and right, and he's leaving it, and he's keeping competitive with them. It's pretty awesome. I think you got to think about that. You also got to think about, 10 years unbeaten. Like, oh my God. He was also the last WEC featherweight champion when that was their premier division. Like, that was a promotion's #1 division because it had like Uriah Faber, Mike Brown, Jens Pulver was like one of the first like big guys to kind of bigger name guys to come in, and he fought Uriah Faber for the title twice, I believe, and didn't work out great for him, but like Uriah Faber really cemented himself as a mega star and a mega talent, and he was their last guy. So, and he beat everyone good in that division practically, except like Mark Hominick, who he fought in his UFC debut. So kind of crazy to think about. And Korean Zombie, he didn't fight Korean Zombie, but Korean Zombie only had 2 fights in WEC, and they were both losses. So I don't know if you can really count it. He kind of came into his own in the UFC, but like it just. And he was the first UFC featherweight champion, as I've said. Ridiculous legacy this guy has. Ridiculous. Like you can't talk about featherweight history without bringing up Jose Aldo. Same thing with him for GSP and welterweight. I think DJ's has an insane legacy too, but I don't think it's on the same level. I think it's like a step below, and that's not a height joke. John Jones, he destroys his legacy all the time because he's popped hot, committing crimes, hitting his wife. Come on, man. Like, that's legacy tarnishing. And now he's ducking Tom Aspinall. Like, I mean, come on. He's completely out of this topic of legacy, I think, personally. Let's look at weight of wins. The weight of wins. I think DJ has some good ones in there, but none of them are great and carry real weight, I think, outside of the Horiguchi and Cejudo one. I think he beat Cejudo in that second fight, but it's a little too close to like call, right? Like it technically, as much as I hate it, even though it's close, I think I can understand the Cejudo pick for the win. It isn't a win, so you can't add it. It doesn't get added here. So he has like really 2 wins that are on the greatness scale of weight. GSP, great wins. BJ Penn twice. Matt Hughes twice. I think the Matt Serra one, it probably isn't considered great for a lot of people, but I think it's kind of fringe great. The first Koscheck one is for sure a great one because Koscheck was like a big wrestling step up for him. Because he was like fighting like Matt Hughes and doing really well. Well, then here's the new hotness wrestler that's young, and he did a very good job against him. John Fitch is a huge win at the time. Carlos Condon is a great win on that resume. Nick Diaz is a great win on that resume. Hendricks and Bisping are great wins on that resume. John Jones, I mean, you got the DC fight, the first one, I guess, because he popped hot for the second one. Glover is actually a great one at the time because he kind of came into his own late, but I think it's probably great. The first Gus fight, if you think he won, I think he lost. And Rashad Evans for sure was a pretty good one. All the other ones, if you take a magnifying glass and kind of look at them, they're not that great. You gotta look for the context. Context is key in this sport. There's a lot of guys out there that if you take a magnifying glass and you just kind of think about things, their resumes aren't very good at all. I'll sprinkle this in as a teaser for another rainy day video if anyone has interest in it. I think Conor McGregor's resume is pretty crap. If we're being honest in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty crap. Honestly. He has like one amazing win, honestly, though. I mean, obviously he beat Aldo. I mean, I've heard. I don't think that fight exists. I haven't seen it yet. And I refuse to. But honestly, most dudes for John Jones, they were either middleweights that didn't want to cut weight. They were dudes way past their prime or at least over the hill in terms of credibility. Or in Shogun's case, coming off a really, really bad injury that hampered their career tremendously afterwards. So, yikes. But Aldo, let's think about this one. Cub Swanson, Mike Brown, Uriah Faber, Kenny Florian, Chad Mendez twice, Korean Zombie, Frankie Edgar, Cheeto Vera. Cheeto Vera is probably not a great one. It's a good one, though. But it's great when you consider the context of him doing it at like 37 or 36 or whatever. Kind of nuts. And I skipped some because I could probably justify a lot more, like Ricardo Lamas. I would love to talk about that. and but I'm going to talk about that in the state of their division at time of fighting. So let's go to DJ first, because this one hurts me, because I'm a huge fan of flyweight. Flyweight was not good in the DJ era. Ray Borg, was fighting for the title. Chris Carriasso, John Moraga, a lot of guys who just weren't good at 125. It's kind of similar to another flyweight person, and no offense here, Valentina Shevchenko. Ooh, you were champion when the era, when the division wasn't great. Now the division's good and you're champion again. But, it's really hard to look at the early stages of you being champion and kind of going ooh, yeah, there's definitely some good wins there in your legacy. Because I think the Alexa Grasso win, this last one, even though it was terrible and boring and nearly put me to sleep, it's probably her biggest win on her record. Admittingly, probably her biggest and best when you think about it, for how good Alexa Grasso is. Because the division now is very good. 125 is very good for flyweights, men and women. But GSP talked about how insane his division was. I use that as the big selling point of why I always say GSP is the greatest ever. It was an insane division. John Jones, 205 has been bad probably since, I think you can literally pinpoint the moment 205 goes from pretty good, or if not awesome, to, oof, we're going to be in a downturn, aren't we? And this is no fault of any fighter. It's probably when the judges said Machida won the first fight with Shota. I think after that, 205 was already starting to really slow down. Things weren't looking great for it, it's probably like that. Then I would probably, and heavyweight sucks now. Heavyweight was pretty good during the Kane era, and it was pretty solid. Actually, it was still pretty good during the Stipe era, but now it's pretty bad. Heavyweight's always been kind of crappy. It's always It's historically the worst division ever. That's just kind of how it is. But when I say it was pretty good, it's pretty good in context of heavyweight. You know what I mean? Aldo fought in the craziest era of featherweight, which historically is one of the good divisions. And what I mean by good divisions is basically lightweight and down. Welterweight had a period of time, if not a period or two, maybe 2 periods of time, back to back, essentially 2 eras where they were nuts. And then after that, plummeted, bad. You know when it ended? When Tyron Woodley KO'd Robbie Lawler. Because Robbie Lawler was running out of guys to fight. Here comes Tyron Woodley, knocks him out. Well, Robbie Lawler was running out of guys to fight. Who's Tyron Woodley fight now? That's all I'm saying. So it was kind of bad after that. So it's really hard to consider that a good division. I consider lightweight and below the good divisions, where people are relying more on skill than just pure athleticism. And featherweight's lightweight's probably a good blend of it. Featherweight, a little bit less athleticism in terms of importance. And then obviously, at flyweight, technique is pretty king. But then, featherweight though, insane during all those era. Chad Mendes was wild, just a ball of power and lightning, juice to the gills, KOing everything in sight. Frankie Edgar, who in my opinion, I think he won the first Benson Henderson fight. I'm kind of a controversial call there. Second one for sure, Frankie Edgar won. Came down in my mind as the best lightweight on the planet. Comes down, instantly fights Aldo for the title. Oh, best fight of all time, by the way. It's my my personal opinion of my favorite fight ever. I think that's my favorite. I think that's the best fight ever, honestly. Just does everything I want in fights, man. Just chef's kiss. But regardless of that, just Ricardo Lamas was insane. Watch his win. We covered it on the retro review, not to plug myself, but Ricardo Lamas' win over Eric Koch is disgustingly brutal and awesome. Yes, it's so awesome. Ricardo Lamas was so much fun. You had, I've been talking for a while, so my brain's turning to mush, and I've been up since 5 p.m. and it's 9 a.m. now. So I apologize a little bit. And I didn't write a script. I just wrote like base notes. But you guys have like Korean Zombie, who was super hot coming into that title fight. It was awesome. Everyone was super pumped for that fight. Mark Hominick was looking unbelievable, and that fight is insanely good. You have Kenny Florian, of course. Like, oh my God, who else was just... There were so many guys just killing it at 45. It was... Cub Swanson, like, was coming into his own, and then here comes Frankie ending that rush. Charles Oliveira was insane. Was, like, really kind of... Like, because he dropped from lightweight to 45, and you can kind of see remnants of the Chuck... The Chucky Hollows we have now, kind of there at featherweight. It wasn't quite there, but we were getting there, and it's kind of exciting in hindsight. And that guys like Yair Rodriguez coming in, featherweight was insane. Oh my God, Eric Koch was great. Sun Sao was at least good. He wasn't fun, but he was at least good. You had guys like Jeremy Stevens coming down. It was a very good time to be a featherweight fan, because it kind of felt like the GSP era, where you couldn't like spit in a direction without getting a top tier guy. It's honestly, maybe that's why. Like, it kind of reminds me of that, because most of those names aren't like Hall of Famers. Like, the GSP has Hall of Famers on his resume. Aldo has Hall of Famers on his resume. The Uriah Favors, Mike Browns, and Frankie Edgars, of course. Kenny Florian, probably an unsung Hall of Famer in my mind. But like, you had a ton of guys who were just nuts, just insanely talented, right up there. And that's kind of a similar vein of what happened with, Aldo's era. Just insane era. Now, infightability, I've already kind of said this one. I can be really brief on, because you kind of have to think about, like, GSP. He was the best wrestler this sport's ever seen. I have him over, like, guys like Cejudo and Merab and Habib. I have him over another guy who I usually put, like, super high up. Pre-hip surgery, Ben Askren. Incredible wrestler. Really good fighter, by the way. If he didn't have, like, a hip replacement surgery, if he never had that, then he probably could have walked into the UFC and just smoked on everybody. Honestly. But GSP was better than it. Just a flat-out better wrestler. Better wrestler than anyone this sport's ever seen. And he didn't come into the sport as a wrestling base. Kind of ridiculous. So he is kind of an anomaly in that sense. Jose Aldo. Now, you have the best striker potentially the sport's ever seen. Like, a lot of guys like to say, like, Alex Bejeda, who's like the real current hotness, who's a fantastic striker, by the way. You have guys like Anderson Silva was a good striker. Reuter, but a very, very good striker from the technical level. I think DJ striking was always really fun to watch. I'm a big fan of Corey Sandhagen striking. I think he's probably the most technical guy of those, what's his face? Trevor Whitman boys, And he's probably the most technical guy. Rose is a very good striker as well. I think you can put her up there. And honestly, I think you can definitely put Rose in the top 10 best strikers in MMA history. I think, Amanda Nunes, fringe top, because sometimes she just kind of, it's probably Carl, she's kind of fringe, like top 10 for me, maybe 10. Cyborg's a little too, like, whoa, like sometimes she just gets pure Vanderlei Silva in terms of technique. Nunes is a little tighter, but I think she relies a lot on her power, whereas Rose has to rely on her technique, and I kind of value people who are more technical. Aldo, incredibly technical. He built a style. And also, who takes him down ever? Frankie Edgar, fantastic wrestler. Ricardo Lamas, fantastic wrestler. All these insane wrestlers he's fought. Chad Mendez, Piotr Jan is a pretty solid wrestler. Merab, the current bantamweight guy, could not take down a 37-year-old, in reality, in fight years, 85-year-old Jose Aldo, and had to resort to clinching him against the cage and just praying for dear life. Couldn't take this guy down. He had prime BJ Penn takedown defense past his prime. Dude was nuts. on the ground too. It wasn't like he was like, if you got him down there, it wasn't like an easy going. This dude was a superstar grappler. He was kind of like a Vanderlei Silva. Like Vanderlei Silva's grappling doesn't get enough credit. Very good defensively, and he wasn't the most offensive grappler. Aldo's a kind of a similar vein. Very good defensively. He's always sweeping. He's standing up. He's not attacking. He's always just getting up. On top, if Aldo would take guys down and just drop bombs on them, very good wrestler in his own right. Like, he was kind of S tier at everything but attacking with submissions. That's like the only thing you really just didn't see it because he didn't need it. So if he probably went for it, maybe, but I'm gonna say that's the only thing he isn't S tier in. GSP, not quite S tier in everything. I think he's probably as close to S tier in everything as well. Those two guys, again, just right here. Like Miscellaneous, if you look at their Miscellaneous things in their career, like Excitement, which this Miscellaneous stuff weighs the least amount for me. Excitement, Aldo was more exciting, but who cares? Entertainment factor does not equal to greatness. Let's be real. Justin Gaethje, massive Justin Gaethje fan. Probably him, and he's probably the most entertaining fighter of all time. He's not the greatest lightweight ever. Not even that. I've watched 2 Chris Matinho fights, and they were kind of fun watching him get beat up. It's not great at all, you know. No offense to Chris Matinho, of course. He kind of got a bad rap getting called in like that. You know, I mean, excitement and greatness aren't the same thing. They're not, codependent on each other. You could say. Maybe my words are bad. Who knows? Excitement. You had the 10-year stretch for Jose Aldo. It does suck he never got the rematch against Conor, but what can you do? I think he would have beat him, personally. Like, you look at the role models they both are. I mean, outside of some embezzling funds for Aldo this year, I think it was this year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. I think it was with my ex. So last year. Horrible year for me. At least love-wise. And during their careers, GSP is probably the best role model. At least one of the best ever. But, I mean, like, Miscellaneous can mean a variety of different things. Usually you just look for those, like, weird, for me, you look for those, like, weird, funky things in there. Like, oh, Aldo had a 10-year run. Or the WC and UFC thing. I look for stuff like that, really, with Miscellaneous. And, honestly, it's super close. But what tips Aldo over the edge for me? The state of his, like, probably the in-fight ability. And the fact that he was, like, or the state of the division at the time, because they're pretty equal, but if you look at the context, there's a little bit more weight in that for Aldo, because Aldo fought in a skilled division, whereas welterweight isn't like one of the more skilled divisions, or as I call it, the good division. It was only good in that era. Historically speaking, you kind of have to look at that. I think it's super close. But I think Aldo, usually the littler guys are better, just historically, just the best. Yeah, Aldo's the king of the little guys. So, isn't he the king of all guys? Like, it's kind of like my brain here. I honestly feel like I did a really good job hyping up why GSP is the best. Here, a little tired, but I think it's Aldo. I think you look at, like, he revolutionized low kicks. Also, another thing too, he was still reinventing himself when he dropped to bantamweight. The calf kick became the new hotness, and he was just pulling his leg back constantly. Never got calf kicked. Fought guys who mastered the calf kick, like Pedro Munoz. Didn't matter to him. Didn't care. He was still evolving. Like, the old dog was learning new tricks, and he was out of his prime. It's just nuts. He's trust me. A really bad way to end my argument here on trust me. He's the greatest ever. But I feel like I've been rambling for a while now. I hope my nonsensical ramblings kind of make sense. If you disagree still, please comment down. I'll probably be more level-headed and able to kind of, go back and forth with you in the comments here. If you're, I'm always willing to open a discussion and to kind of talk about things like this. This is what's fun about our sport. Everyone has opinions, and it's kind of fun to talk about them, Maybe you have a wild GOAT contender. Maybe it's like Chris Lytle. Oh, actually, Chris Lytle's pretty sick. He's not GOAT contention, but, like, he's sick. I'm trying to think of someone random. Maybe you have a guy like, I don't know, like Carl Parisian. Late stage Carl Parisian. Let's talk about it, I guess. Dennis Hallman? What about that one? Anyways, guys, I'm Joe with the INC. This was a rainy day video. Went way too long. So, I'm Joe with the INC. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.